Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. We're the Movie Couple. I'm Wendy.
I'm Dustin.
And this is our non-spoiler review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, going to be in theaters on June 30th, and this is also the 5th Indiana Jones, and probably the final one with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. We're not saying that they're going to recast already and do all of that stuff, but we're just saying...
Well, the fact that Harrison Ford came out at D23 at Star Wars Celebration during the Lucasfilm panel, and he has mentioned multiple times, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to let you guys throw me out of buses or cars. He's like, I'm too old for that shit. So it makes a lot of sense too, you know? And Harrison has been very faithful to this role. He has loved Indiana Jones. He has put his blood, sweat, and tears into this role. And it is kind of appropriate to see him kind of at least be there to kind of usher the end, or at least from what it seems like, the end of Indiana Jones.
The send-off for Indy. And this one is directed by James Mangold. So this one, with Dr. Jones, he's teaching at his college, but he's also retiring, but not before One Last Adventure.
Very One Last Adventure, and he teams up with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I don't want to discuss their relationship.
Just in case y'all don't watch the trailer, right?
Yeah, but it's a little interesting of a relationship on how they know each other, where they know each other from, and something that they actually do in this movie. They first start off with exploring the past.
Yes.
So there is a lot of de-aging for Harrison Ford into young Indiana Jones. But I have to admit, at the beginning of this movie, that's actually what really caught me and really got me excited about the rest of the movie going forward, because they did a good job on capturing the essence and the feel and the vibe of what an Indiana Jones movie is. You know, they have that fun action adventure part at the beginning, and then they kind of go into the storyline.
Yes, and I think what you touched on there, like the flashback, that felt, even though it is, through the de-aging technology, and it is not perfect, there are some parts, it's always around the eyes and like in the lighting on the skin where they can't match it perfectly, and their skin looks, instead of like that kind of just like light and shadow, it just kind of looks a little shiny, a little too smooth. There's not enough of that skin texture.
But it's really,
right
just around
the tracking
here.
around the eyes. I think it's where it's most noticeable. In some scenes more than the other, but we acknowledge that it's like, it has never been perfect for any de-aging. It has consistently gotten better. So I imagine, the next movie, whatever they use the technology for, it will continue to get better. But
I have to admit, when we first saw him, I was like, oh, okay, that's not that bad. And then you're like, oh, okay, I can see it. And then there was this one moment where
later
you're like,
on in the film,
oh, okay, that really stands out. So, but honestly, once you get past that, that scene is fun. It's exciting. It feels like an Indiana Jones movie. So much better than anything that happened in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I have to admit, this really did capture and made me excited for an Indiana Jones movie again.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the scenes that, as you said, took the words right out of my mouth. It feels like an indie, it feels indie. Like the punching Nazis, the high stake.
No, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. The, high stake adventure, the sort of edge of your seat, like, nothing's going to happen, right? And then they, like, last minute, avoid, like, a giant rock or a swinging blade or something like that. So it's always great to see that. And then we go back in, the present day Indy, where he's obviously older, getting ready to hang up that, like, fedora. We do explore a little bit of his personal life and his current relationships with certain people, where they're at. But obviously the big thing is the Dial of Destiny. So there is this mechanism that, of course, it's never just Indy going after it, right? It's always several people.
Yeah, a couple Nazis, a couple other people, interested parties, and so they constantly have to fight them off. But that's what Indiana Jones has kind of always been. It's always been the chase for the MacGuffin, whatever the item is, whether it be the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant,
yes,
or the Three Stones, or the Crystal Skull.
I was hoping you were going to say that. Well, forget about that movie.
But I have to admit, the action, I mean, what really does stand out excellent about this movie is the action scenes. They do feel a lot more about Indiana Jones. I do have to admit, there were moments where they did kind of jump the shark on some things. Nowhere near as bad as the fourth one, but that's also a part of the charm of Indiana Jones. But I think the first three pulled it off a lot better than this one. This movie really is right smack dab in the middle of the three and the fourth one. And when it comes
that's such a low bar, though.
I know the fourth one is
I'm
such
sorry.
a low
And
bar.
look, if you enjoyed, Indy 4, we love that for you. You keep enjoying it no matter what anyone says, right? Because that's for your enjoyment. But I tried liking the movie. I tried watching it again at home. I just couldn't connect with it. So for me, like, I just kind of just skip over that one. And I think this one is not just like a little bit better than Indy 4. It's a lot better than Indy 4. It feels like an indie movie in a lot of the parts. The adventuring, the globe-trotting, sort of searching after treasure and adventure, and the witty banter back and forth. And for this film, I was wondering how much they were going to lean into the nostalgia of it all. So they do, but they don't use it so much where the entire film is only reliant on it. They don't do that. They do it just enough, a touch here and there, to, for the fans to be like, I see what you did there, or they kind of like, do like a one-liner that kind of throws you back to a certain moment in that certain film. There are a couple of the characters we get to meet in this one. We have Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I like her as an actor so much. I didn't super love her character in this one. I really thought I was going to, but I really didn't. I actually didn't warm up to her character until the third act.
Yeah, and that's when there is, it's the third act. So this is when character arcs start to come to fruition, when characters start to realize this or that about certain events in their life. So it was around that time when we did start kind of warming up to her character a lot more. But I have to admit, from when we first met her through the second act, a part of me was just not really digging her, and also her and Indy's relationship.
Yes.
I feel like they threw a lot of storyline points in there very haphazardly because they needed to move the plot forward. And that was actually something that I had a big problem with, because it really does feel like there's a lot of chunks missing out of this.
Yes.
Like, this may have been a 3-hour movie when they first got it to the editing table, and then cut out just, we have to make cuts here, we have to make cuts here, because there are points to where it just kind of goes from this point, and then, okay, we're skipping all of the build-up, and we're just getting to the actual reveal, or the actual, okay, we have to get to where they finally meet up with the bad guys again, or they finally get to this place, instead of actually building their way to it.
Yeah, and with that said, even though with the story feeling like somewhat incomplete, it still feels a tad too long. I think this film is the longest in all of the franchise at 2 hours and 20 some minutes. And there were parts where I felt like it just stalled and it lost its pacing. And, obviously they get you back into it with the fun adventure and the high stakes and all that stuff. And you're like, what's going to happen? Who's going to live or die? Who gets the treasure? But it's also, if you have watched all the indie films, it's formulaic as well. So it's kind of like, you're surprised, but again, also not really if you've seen all the indie films.
They also left you hanging on a lot of thread lines, too, to where
things didn't get resolved, at all.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second, how is he just able to go back out like that? And shouldn't he be in big trouble right now because this happened?
Right, in the beginning of the film. So if you, once you guys watch the film, you're like, what are they talking about? I just don't want to give it away, but...
Yeah.
And we, there's no post-credit or mid-credit scene.
Yeah, you don't have to stick around.
Don't feel like you have to, unless you, of course, want to respect the artists and crew that
Very
worked
true.
on the film. That's obviously your prerogative. So I had a good time with the film. I found it still very entertaining. Even though it felt a bit long at the time, most of all, I just enjoy watching Harrison Ford being Indiana Jones. That's my favorite.
And that is one of the big things, is this movie really did have that vibe and that feel of Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford was giving it his all. It really did look like he was doing a lot of whatever stunt he could do.
A lot, actually.
I was like,
it feels
whoa,
like it.
He's actually driving that car, and
Yes.
even though you could tell that the car itself was on a green screen, and there are a lot of special effects moments where you're like, ooh, yeah, they're definitely on a set, on a green screen. That's obviously pulled very far out, so you don't have to tell that it's not Harrison Ford. But there's still moments when, yeah, he's in that car. That car's moving around on the set, and you're like, that's Harrison.
Yeah.
But the special effects needed a little bit more work.
Yeah, and with that said, you guys, we're going to go ahead and give you our rating for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Our movie rating is a little bit different than just like a grading or number system, so go ahead and check it out in the video description below. For this movie, look, I knew it was going to be, you know, the final one with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, so of course I was going to go and enjoy it, and combined with, you know, the big cinematic stuff, visually you get to see the John Williams score, which is always a win by default. I had a good time, even though it's not better than the original, and I felt like the storyline could have used some tightening up. There's some characters that I liked more than the others. There's some characters that I was like, why are they here? And some of the questions I had was, if they're such good friends of Indy, how come in all of the movies we've never even heard him utter any of these? So you'll see like what we're talking about once you see the film, and also we will be doing a spoiler review on our Patreon for this. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. My rating for this movie is matinee it.
And I have to tell you the truth, this movie really lines up right in the middle of Indy 4 and the rest of the original trilogy. But there's such a disparity between the two. I thought this movie did have a lot of fun, even though the special effects were a little off in some parts. I still thought that the characters were likable, but I just couldn't relate to them as much. And there were some moments where you're just like, where you lose the storyline. I'm going to give this a stream it.
And there you guys have it. That is our non-spoiler thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Thank you so much for watching. Comment your thoughts on the film once you've seen it in the comment section below, and we will see you in the next one.